Well, what's going on, Ascent Nation? Welcome back. My name is Brian, and I'll be your host today. What we're going to dive into today is really talking about evolution versus repeating the same cycles and how important we think it is that you do start to make different choices, move yourself in a different direction so you can evolve so that you're not stuck in this wash, rinse, repeat type cycle when it comes to life. So let's get into it.
Doing
So one of
good.
the things that's common that I think I hear a lot when I'm talking to different folks out there, and maybe they're feeling a little bit stuck or like wherever it is in life is not quite where they like to be. They reflect on their history and they look at the different choices and different things that have happened in their life, and they'll make this comment: "I am where I belong," based on whatever history or whatever things that they're telling themselves. So I want to bring that question to you guys. And when you say, you are where you belong, is that true? Is that truly a belief that you should have? Or are there some things that maybe you should reflect and look at and draw from differently to start to break that chain and move yourself forward? Jerry, you have any thoughts on that?
The saying "you are where you belong." I was sitting with that. And I was like, well, I am where I am, right, or where I find myself. But is that necessarily where I belong? And that's not necessarily so. But you get you get the results of your own consciousness. You get who you are being. So in a way, yes, you get where you are where you belong, but that doesn't mean you have to stay there. It doesn't mean that you have to continue belonging there. You can change your consciousness and then go to another place where you belong. Everything we've done up until now is what we've selected to be true about ourselves, and is thusly why we have the results that we have. But just because I belong here now doesn't mean I belong here in the next moment or next year or so on and so forth. So, in other words, you get what you are. I think it's like John chapter 6. It says, "No one comes unless the Father draws him." I've come to know that the Father is my higher consciousness, my ultimate ideal, and leading me on a journey of my own life of experiences. Everywhere that I go is where I'm supposed to be, to not only find blessings for myself, but to give blessings to those that are around me. So technically, I can't disagree with "you are where you belong," but I also hear where people come in and be like, "Well, this is just the way it is, and this is just my lot in life, and I there's nothing I can do about it." And thusly they stay in that lack mentality, that poverty state, that sickness, whatever, and justify their own failure or lack or whatever as a way to justify their continued way of lower consciousness, if you will.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what I take away from that too, is when you hear people talk about this is just my lot in life and I deserve this and I don't deserve that. So there are some different beliefs and things that happen with that. Chris, what are your thoughts on that?
I was sitting there just kind of running that through my head while Jerry was talking. And one of the thoughts that came to mind was, now, I think most of us, definitely you and me, Brian, we've had the fortune of living in a number of places for extended periods of time. And I don't think that I've ever been in any of the places that I've ever been for the extended periods of time that I've been in those places that I've said to myself, Chris, you are where you belong. I don't think I've ever said that. And I couldn't imagine putting my lips around that phrase to say that. Like Jerry said, you are where you are in this particular moment. Like I said, I'm going to lean back and say I've been very fortunate that I've been able to have experiences in different locales with different people, in different environments. I talk about that now in my new situation I'm involved in right now about fostering dreams, and how young people do not get it. There are certain young people that do not get their dreams fostered. they're not even afforded the idea of being able to dream. I think the panel here has been afforded that opportunity. I can definitely say that for myself. I can say that for Brian, and to a lesser extent, I can say that to Vin and probably to you, Jerry. And where I am today, that is one of my messages that is very important, that I try to champion forward in the business that I'm involved in today, is that. And I think the other thing when you said that was a negative, that I took away as a negative, was what that evokes is that the journey's over. The race has been run. There's nothing else to be done. And I don't know how anybody can live like that. I personally could not do it. I would just soon just call it a life, if that's going to be the mindset I'm going to operate with. Because I think that every day you should look to new things. You should continue to be curious. Even at our age, I'm still super curious right now. I mean, matter of fact, the things that I'm involved in now have literally opened that door wide open. And now I'm challenging myself on, just like you and I were talking about, Brian, before the broadcast. I'm in the process of getting some certifications that if you'd have said that to me 10 years ago or whatever, I'd have been like, yeah, whatever. I don't, why would I even do that? And now it's become apparent why, because of the path that I've chosen, or maybe I've been selected, or, I don't spend a lot of time getting into that space of why I'm where I am. But more importantly, as now that I am here, what are we going to do with it? Where are we going to go with it? How are we going to maximize it? So, it's literally, that's the daily challenge for me as I move forward. What's next? Some of those questions we've asked in the past. Why not? Why am I here versus why not? So anyway, I could continue to talk for many, many more minutes, but I'll pass the buck on.
Yeah. So, Chris, I want to come back to some of the things that you brought up that I made some notes on. But before we do that, Vinny, how about you share just your perspective on this whole thing? You are where you belong.
I'm thinking about 2 or 3 different kind of mindsets or perspectives on this one based off of what I've been hearing. Belonging, as kind of what Chris was talking about, is definitely something where, I feel like could be more of an intrinsic. So it's what I feel as belonging based off of my environment, obviously my friend circle, my connection points. And then, of course, living in Hawaii, you've got the belonging to the land, the aina, and that has a powerful message. I truly believe that when I'm in locations or areas or geographies that have a lot of energy, or mana, as they call it in Hawaii, that's definitely something where you can kind of attune to and feel. There's certain experiences you go to. It's like, wow, there's a lot of whatever that is, you can call it. And then, the belonging piece, the other side of it is I feel like there's a negative side, which could be extrinsic. So it's that outside feedback into us, where it's like, oh, you know what? Everyone else is saying that I should be here, or I expect to be here, or I'm told that this is where my place in society is, or I can never achieve, another. There's that whole glass ceiling kind of concept too. So when you bring it back to the whole evolution or repeat itself, again, that's that mind shift change. That's, as you said, Brian, that growth versus scarcity, that abundance mindset too, which all of us are trying to break out of, because when you live in scarcity, it's you limit yourself, and you also attract that too. So if we're going to only limit ourselves and manifest where, okay, this is what I want, this is what I feel, in the end, in my belief, from what I've been learning from others, is that it comes down to your own belief in yourself. What is your self-worth? How do I feel about myself? And yeah, it's much more crystal clear in my mind today of those limitations that I have. And simply put, I'm now looking at where I resist in my mind, where I resist in the things that I want to do or need to do or have to do, and why am I resisting that? And achieving those small wins of getting to accomplishments. So building confidence and viewing myself in a different light.
So I want to go back to something that kind of triggered in my mind when Chris was talking. And then, and this actually has to do, because I think the key component, we've identified ways to move forward, some of the steps that you can take, and beliefs and, the different things you may affirm for yourself, etc. However, there was one word that got mentioned, and I think we really need to start there, because until we can give some guidance to get out of that hole, then I don't think any of it actually matters. And that's defeated, or feeling as if you're already defeated. As you said, the race has already been run. So that's really the next thing that I want to talk about historically for either yourself personally, or situations or people that you may know of that might have been in that particular place in their lives. What have you seen them do to essentially break out of that? Because that's step one of one, I think, is to everything that we're talking about today. Who has some thoughts on, just that defeatist mentality and what it takes to essentially crack that egg and get yourself out of that space?
Well, a prevailing thought keeps coming to my mind, and it started when we first went to broadcast. Is that people like seeing you in spaces that they like seeing you in, or they get used to seeing you in. And the moment you decide that you don't want to be in that space, for whatever the reason may be, you're gonna encounter detractors. You're going to encounter folks, the naysayers. And believe it or not, whether some of it's going to be underlying, some of it's going to be out in front where you can see it visibly, but you're going to you're going to start to put together a list of followers who want you to fail. They may not actively tell you that, or they may not actively broadcast that to the world, but it is the honest to God truth that the people don't want to see you move beyond where they're comfortable seeing you. And that is something that is a fight. We fight. At least I fight. It's a feeling. Now, granted, I want to say present company excluded. I never feel that. But I've had folks in the past, when they hear I'm doing this or they see I'm doing that, and it's like, it brings pause to them. And a lot of times it's, they think my ego's in play, or, how dare he, how dare he decide he wants to elevate his program, and things of that. And it's true. I mean, it is so true. And I think that ends up becoming a battle alongside your own battle. Cause I mean, my stuff is chronicled. I very much wear mine, especially within this group, that I deal with a fear. Now, fear for me is two different things: fear of success and fear of failure. And sometimes they double team me. Sometimes one takes a break and the other one's banging on me, and then the other one comes back and starts banging on me. I'm experiencing that right now. And I am segueing into back into an educational development program where I'm a teaching assistant in the tech space. So it's bringing up so many things from my own past. As I mentioned earlier, the fostering of dreams, or the lack thereof fostering of dreams. So I've got a lot of battles I'm fighting within myself, as well as trying to identify how I can be supportive to the young charge, as I like to put them, that I have underneath the umbrella that I'm operating out of. So there's a lot of in real time dealing of emotions, dealing with my own emotions. I went this past week would be a perfect example for me where I've got to take this technical exam. Now, I've been in the tech space for 20 years, but I've been in it from more of a boss's perspective and not necessarily a boots on the ground, turning a screwdriver perspective. So there's certain things I don't know, and I'm quick to admit that. But I went through this phase over this last week where I was like, I'm going to fail this test. It's just the logic of it all for me. And I had to go through this thing where I had to pull myself out of the fires per se and say, well, why are you going to fail this test? That's what your mind is telling you. But the reality is you're a competent professional. You're actually an intelligent human being. You just need to apply what it is you're dealing with. And it's been a full circle moment where I kept telling myself, and I guess I was just trying to take pressure off of my head. I kind of, within my group, I'm probably going to fail. And then I was 2 or 3 days of that. And then I finally was like, well, why are you going, I kept having these internal conversations with myself. Why do you think like that? I talked to my cousin, Tommy, right? He's kind of the guy that'll bring me down to earth all the time. And he reminded me, he's like, you have worked in 5 or 6 different industries in your professional life cycle so far to date. And he says, think about every industry that you got into, and you said you're 6 weeks in. So I'm literally 6 weeks into this new thing. He says, were you any good at 6 weeks? I said, probably not. He said, exactly. He said, but you got good because you applied yourself and you stayed with it. I said, you know what? You're right. He said, so why should this be any different? And I operate from a very logical perspective. And sometimes you have to put the logic in my face for it to start to make sense for me again. And Brian, you know that because you've been friends with me for 25 years. Yep. That's who I am, and that's how I operate. But it's really about making sense of it all.
Let me jump in because I want to. Because you hit on something, and while we're there, I want to tap back on it because you were talking about this test, right, and how you are telling yourself, "I'm going to fail this test," right? So you're already in your own mental space, going that little person on your shoulder. You can't do this. What are you doing? Why are you doing? So, and I wanted to get back to that because that's important, I think, for our audience to hear. What did you do specifically to pull yourself past that to move forward?
Well, one of the things I had to do was I had to be reminded of past experiences.
Okay.
Because sometimes I think we, especially if we're in the moment, we tend to forget our history. I think a lot of people forget their history. And I really had to lean back into, I had to lean back into my successes. And like I said, Tommy was very instrumental in that, in talking to me about the fact that I forget sometimes I've had the fortune of working in 6 or 7 different industries. And I've had to come in, be taught or learned to literally thrive and succeed. And I think most of us are prideful professionals that we take it on the shoulder that, hey, we're here for a reason, and it's up to me to show that reason. So that's that muscle memory that I like to talk about all the time. And for me, it's about repetition. So I have to remind myself, even though this stuff is ingrained in me, I have to remind myself of what I'm about, how I move, how my brains are somewhat conditioned to actually keep it moving, keep succeeding, keep the growth pattern going. Because it's easy to fall into that rut, that self-defeatist rut. It really is. It's the woe is me, and I want you to feel sorry for me. And that's, I said that a long time ago, how I think I said that 6 months ago 6 or 9 months ago when we were podcasting one time, that I had realized that I was carrying a victim's mentality. So every time something wasn't going my way, that was my default, was I'm a victim. Life isn't fair. Why do I got to go through all of this and stuff like that? Well, it's just kind of the reality of life sometimes. And you can spend time boo-hooing about it, or you can spend time trying to fix it and evolving and keeping it moving forward in your day-to-day travels and trying to make your dreams come true.
100%. So Vince, I'm gonna come to you next and just kind of get your perspective on, because I know you've had some experience in that space of not only personally, but helping others try to get over that defeatist mindset. What can you share with us talking about that?
A couple of things here that come to mind. One is my path towards really embracing and understanding the concepts around Stoicism. And Stoicism, for those that know or don't know, can, in my book, can be summarized into, you can't change others, but you can change the way you react to things. And that's kind of one really big thing too, especially when we are either getting that extrinsic, that external negative feedback about, saying this is where you belong, or this is where you're supposed to be, or this is this is where you should be, based off of whatever folks are projecting to us. And then there's the other side of things too, which is, what Chris brought up too. I think we're all, for the most part, our logical reasoning brain we're pretty smart. I mean, we're lifelong learners. However, that our subconscious brain is the one that holds on to that. And as a parent, this is the piece where I think it's even more real, more evident is in how I talk to my kids. Is also a reflection of how I was talked to. And growing up, especially if you come into athletics or whatnot, I often remember, playing whatever sport it is, and it's like your inner talk, your inner dialogue, when you don't make that shot or you don't do this or whatever. That's in my book, that subconscious piece of it, of where you stand and what you can do. Is your inner voice or your inner kind of internal dialogue telling you, okay, you got this, you can do this? Or in my book, it was like, man, you suck. and that's evident in that kind of victim mentality too. And Jerry actually brings this up a lot in the conversations we have, which I'd love him to share as well, is like, how do you rewrite that? How do you rewrite that script? How do you play it out in a different way? Because after the fact, as you go to bed or as you reflect on, you start to change the words you use. You start to change your mindset little by little of how you think it went versus how it actually went. Because inevitably, I think collectively as a human race, have all those external kind of negative conversations in us, about us, and to us.
Yeah, it's so funny. It kind of even goes back to the first question you were saying, like, you are where you belong. Well, my actual belief is, the results in your life are actually a reflection of who you say that you are. So, if a repeated phrase that you might have in your head, you're going to find proof of it out there in the world, no matter what, good, bad, or indifferent. That's what you're going to get. And when you originally asked this question, the second question, I thought of one of my first clients who was absolutely had a defeatist mentality, and when we worked together, we went through one of my programs, and that first week of the program is like, it's such a huge part of what my philosophy is and what I help people understand, which is automatic meaning making. We, based on, like Vincent was saying, based on our past programmings and all this stuff, we have a certain reaction to the world that's automatic. We don't necessarily even consciously think it through. It comes through us from our subconscious mind, subconscious programming. But one of my mentors would say to me, he would say, Jerry, we live in a mostly imaginal world. And when we imagine meaning automatically, frustration, doubt, worry, lack, and so on and so forth are the result. And if that being true, it behooves a person to actually start becoming conscious of the meaning that they make and the reactions that they have, because a person's reactions to life determines their concept of themselves. So, oh, here we go again. A bill just showed up, and so on and so forth. That reaction is actually telling you, if you're paying attention, what you believe to be true about you. A test is coming up. Oh my God, I'm going to fail this test, and so on and so forth. True or not, that's what you are holding on to in consciousness, and that's what's going to reflect in the world until someone snaps you out of it, of course, right? But at the end of the day, what we're talking about here is a person's concept of themselves or their image of themselves. And when I work on this with people, I have them sit down and just like, can you for a week pay attention to how you react to sounds? Can you pay attention to how you react to sight? Can you pay attention to how you react to sensations? And can you pay attention to the way you react to conversations that have nothing to do with you, conversations that do have something to do with you? Watch the news and see how you react to the news. Not to say that you are those reactions, but just to observe. The fact, one, that you can observe, and then two, that you aren't the observation. You're the one who's giving life to the observation. And once you actually understand that, that's when things change. Because then you start realizing that your life is literally coming through you, not to you. You've never been a victim of your life. You've actually been the creator the whole time. You're such a powerful creator that you've actually forgotten that you are creating your life. And so you fall victim to your own imaginings, your own creations, which is fine. But once you wake up to it, then you realize how powerful you are and how you can actually become the blessing, not only to your life, but the life of others, by the way you show up. And which again, brings me back to the original question, you are where you belong. Well, yeah, you are. And you have the opportunity of changing how you are reacting to the environment that you find yourself in any given moment by choice.
By choice. Absolutely by choice. Yeah, no doubt about that. So one thing I want to just put on here, because one of the terms, and Chris uses it a lot, we talk about just conflict or being conflict averse. And as a society, we've really gotten into this mindset of not wanting to participate or engage in any type of conflict, right? Well, where I think for our purpose today, there is conflict within you as an individual that I also think you need to have and get past, right? That's kind of, again, step one of one. And that is once you have identified that there are other opportunities and other places and other things that you want to accomplish, there's that conflict of that voice, as you were just talking about, Jerry, saying, I can't do it, or I'm going to fail, or the race is already over. So that's a fight that you have to have out of the box right there at the very beginning. And so the question then becomes, if I'm so conflict averse to even have that battle, what are my chances of succeeding at what the quote unquote next level of something like that? So that's one thing I think really mentally to start to talk about. And Vince mentioned your subconscious mind and getting that in check. And that's another small area of, I'm going to use the term, conflict within that you have to be able to master and move your way past.
What if in conflict aversion, it was actually thought of differently, where it's like fear on the other side of fear is peace?
Because I think there's actually kind of a linear pattern. And I think that's the main thing that I want to show. As we said to begin, you are where you belong. Well, that may or may not be true, but I am where I am, which is what Jerry stated earlier. And that's very true. Now, once you've established that, then it's okay, where do I want to be next? Right. So now what choices do I need to make to start to make that happen? So that's all part of that evolutionary mindset that we need to start to be able to develop and move ourselves forward. But how do we do that? Is it just choice? Is it community? Is it our social circles is it going out and getting more education so we feel more comfortable? What are some of the different things that we can do or should do to start to move ourselves forward step by step by step? Vince, what are your thoughts, especially coming from an academic standpoint? I know we've talked about how that's not always the answer, but sometimes it is. So what's your perspective on that?
One of the things that's been top of mind as I evolve myself is the idea around manifestation. So I just talked about this with my therapist last week too. Manifesting what I want my life to be, how I want to show up, how it then can align to how am I living my truest life, how am I living in what is coined flow state, where my life and my values are aligned, where I am living my best life. And I don't do this well enough yet, but I'm working on this, and I'm appreciating the fact that I am learning through this whole experience of, it's seeing who I want to be, it's setting those goals, and then being okay with where I'm at. So being content with it and not being angry with myself for that. So that self-reflection piece is really important, because you are your own worst, most critical, whatever. And then moving past that and saying, okay, this is where I'm at and I'm okay with it. This is not how I want to show up and I'm okay with it. This is who I will be and I'm moving towards it. And this is what it looks like. This is how I talk. This is the vocabulary I use. These are the types of individuals that I surround myself. And these are some of the things that we discuss and find value in. These are some of the things that I do and find value in. And a lot of that, as we've talked about this, really comes down to my own self-image myself. If I believe that I'm a valuable individual to myself, if I believe that I add value and I'm happy and I'm content to myself, without all that external kind of factors looking in and saying, oh, you should be here. I mean, I would say that was my biggest challenge as the whole repeating cycle is, oh, I should be here. I should be making this money. I should be at this status level. I should be, the image to which our culture or our cultures define us has been my biggest challenge, because it was not something that I was feeling in line in flow state.
So let me follow up with something with you with that, Vince, because one of the things that I got out of that was you have established essentially this mindset train that's moving forward along this track as to where you see it and where you would like to get to. But for someone who's struggling to get those foundational pieces in line, what would you suggest that they do just to essentially is it compartmentalized so you know where the pieces and parts are, and then you can start to formulate a plan? What are some of the tactics that you used for yourself to be able to pull that formula together?
Thus far, besides doing all the self work of finding resources, whether it's in an academic sense, I'm a big fan of storytelling, and I like to hear and see others and how their own experiences, and how that relates to my own experiences as well. So, looking or finding individuals who have been on this path of growth. The one that it seems to be a resounding kind of centerpiece is, the story of the entrepreneur, or the story of a hero, the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell. And when we see this consistent path of the hero's journey and coming down, you know, for those of us that don't know it, it's you're going up and you're seeing it, and the hero is the one that's whether it's in Star Wars, which is what everyone knows what Joseph Campbell was really profound in influencing, or Disney movies. It's that person or that individual that goes all the way up and they're all the way down, and going to that piece. It's that when they start slowing down and come to the bottom, and then they pick themselves up. That's the piece where that's the hardest. That's the make or break it in some regards. And a lot of times in our journey, it's not a train, because it's not linear. It's not one way. It's you go up, you go down, you go up, you go down, you go up, you go down. And I find myself being fascinated with just asking those questions of what was it? What were the things you were doing? What was the aha moment? How did you find yourself? How did you do that mind shift change to go back up? So for me, it's really been finding my tribe or tribes. It's been looking at how others have gone through this process. It's realizing that, I'm not alone. That's really important, is you are not alone in your own situation. This is not you. I am here with you.
Oh, my mic is not muted. Oh, my bad.
Absolutely. Vince, thanks for sharing that, because I think that's important that our audience hears that it's not linear, for sure. I mean, you want to frame it in a way so it gives you a direction that you're working toward, but understand that definitely be peaks and valleys, and some days where you're just lying flat on your back and not knowing what to do next. But the key is to get up and do whatever you do to get back on your path and on that journey.
I've come to realize that a lot of my shifts and my journey has been, again, it's been the ability to choose. I'm always given that opportunity to choose whatever, good, better, and different. It's always up to me. And my whole life has been a series of making quantum leaps, despite any proof that I'm going to succeed at it or not. It's always just been, yeah, I'm going to do that. And everybody in my life usually goes, well, why would you do that? There's this paved path that's already determined, and so on and so forth. And for whatever reason, I'm just like, yeah, but that doesn't sound fun, or that doesn't sound invigorating, or that doesn't sound adventurous. And I mean, they could be, but that's not for me. And what I've come to realize through the years is that most people are actually just reflecting my own doubts and worries. They are showing me the doubts that I've held on to within my own self, and um, uh, I'm stepping into that conflict zone, or that unknown realm of how things are going to turn out. But I've kind of proven to myself that, just even looking on my past, that I didn't know how XYZ was going to happen. All I knew was that that's what I was going to do. I was going to achieve it, and so on and so forth. Literally, I'm thinking of when I made the move to New York City to pursue entertainment. And I mean, I guess I was already in entertainment, but literally moving to New York City to try to make it as an actor and a producer and stuff. When I moved out there, there was I didn't know where I was going to live. I didn't know when, I didn't have any money. All I had was like a kind of a small scholarship to go to a conservatory. And, but I made the decision anyways. And within 4 weeks of me making this decision, I found out that I had an aunt that lived in New York that had a basement that was available for me. Money literally just came out of any crevice. You know, and I was put at the top. I was put into the top class at my school, and I had, as far as I was concerned, there was no reason for me to be put up at that level. But it drove me, being at that level, drove me to succeed. And I told my dad when I was moving out there, it's like, watch, I'll be the best in class. And there was no proof, right? Other than the fact that, well, that's just, I can't see how I can't be. It would be ridiculous for me to not be the most ideal version of myself, because who else is living this life? And now, through the years, I've come to wake up to what we're talking about, and all this stuff is like, oh, that's what was going on, which is this whole idea of making quantum leaps, or manifesting your reality, or stepping outside of what you know, because you've done it before. You never knew how to drive a car when you learned how to drive a car. You just knew you were going to drive that car. But can you tell me the moment that you actually mastered the art of driving a car? Every time I've asked the person this, the answer is no. It's just one day they just realized that they could. They just realized that they don't suck at driving anymore. Right? You're like leaning back, got the hands on the wheel, you're texting, which you shouldn't be doing, but you're doing all these things because it's been programmed into you. And so for me, whatever it is, whatever your endeavor is, you must be living in the end, knowing that you already are the person that you want to be. You already are him. Even if you fail that test, it means nothing in the grand scheme of your ideal, because it's all an emerging unfolding that's happening, right? But what most people have going on in their life is difficulty came, conflict came, loss came, and they unconsciously choose the lack state, and then they go down that route. But what's going on is they're living in the end that they failed. That's where most people operate from. Most people are unaware that they are living in some end, desired or not. And if you can actually wake up to that fact, you can then choose, okay, I wake up in the morning, how would I like this day to end? I would love it if it was just like, oh my God, I had a great conversation with XYZ person. I had an amazing meal. All my meals were amazing. My meetings went well, so on and so forth, and really live in that end. And then wind up that person you are, and then go about the day and watch it unfold. It might be good, it might be bad, but then guess what? At the end of the day, you can choose, how did the day go? Oh, are you dwelling on that one thing, that one negative thing that happened today? And it just is like, because my whole day was shit. Excuse me for cursing. My whole day was crap because of this one thing. Is that true? No, of course not. Reframe it, revise, and look back on your day and say, you know what? Dinner was good. That conversation with XYZ person was awesome. If I wanted it to be awesomer, I imagine that it was awesomer, quote unquote. I'm coining a new word, awesomer. And letting that be true. Because when you go to bed in that state of consciousness, you wake up the next day to experience what you go to bed with. And if you can actually do this over and over again and practice that art of imagining your ideal, it actually becomes simpler and simpler. And just like driving the car or learning how to drive a car, one day you wake up to the fact that, wait a minute, I know how to master imagining a great day. You won't know when it happened, but one day you wake up to the fact. But you have to be in that practice of waking up and setting what some people would call setting the intention for the day. But me, I look at it, I live in the end. I live with the end in mind, because in my Father's house there are many mansions. I go to prepare a place for you, that where I go, there you will be also. So you're taken along this journey to match that state of consciousness that you set in the morning, or set whenever you set it. It doesn't have to be the morning, it could be right now, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Agreed with you so much on that. And it's funny because you hit on something, Jerry, that I use also when I'm coaching some of my clients. And that, because it is a lot about just mindset and, as you said, framing that end in mind type thing. And a lot of the times people have a struggle just getting out of their own way, right? Just mentally or emotionally, spiritually, whatever it might be. And so I give them this very common analogy, and 99 out of 100 people relate to this, and they go, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. And that is, start to live in your Friday mentality versus your Monday mentality. Because we all do it. Monday's like Monday, it's freaking Monday. But when Friday rolls around, hey, it's Friday, right? That's the mentality, because it means you're capable of it, right? Because you have it. So my point with that is, live in that Friday mentality 7 days a week. That, if you can just start there, that'll start to groom and grow you, and kind of set, I think, a new framework, a new framework and template for how to continue to evolve yourself.
I just something new that's kind of in line with what you just described there about a Friday mentality or a birthday mentality. I discovered this. I guess it's been 2 weeks now. I was out in the field. I was listening to a podcast, and they were just talking about something. And one of the persons talking said, "I feel bad that happened." And I literally had to stop the podcast. I was like, that person just said, "I feel bad." Like, as in, I'm feeling this cup, or I'm feeling this shirt. Like, the way they said it is just like, I feel it. I was like, well, I know I can feel a shirt, and I know I can imagine feeling a shirt. Can I feel an adjective? So I was like, all right, I feel bad. Let me just feel bad. Sure enough, like a lightning bolt, I felt bad, and the thoughts matched it. All these type of things. I was like, okay, I don't want to feel this. Let me feel good. And I felt good, and sure enough, my body felt good, my mind felt good. And I realized, I was like, wait a minute. I can feel things, and I can choose to feel things without reason, without thought, without logic, without anything. I feel prosperous. I don't need proof. I don't need reason. I just need to feel it. I just need to feel it. And once I realized it, my last 2 weeks has been crazy, because I can just choose to feel good whenever I want. I can just feel luxury whenever I want. I don't need anything external to myself to feel what I want to feel. And I've been practicing it with myself and my clients and my friends. And it's been just the most subtle tweak, because I don't have to think about it. That's been the biggest change. I don't have to think about anything. I can actually just feel what I want to feel. And I just thought that was in line with the whole feel Friday. Feel like it's Friday. That it's not Friday. You don't have any proof that it's Friday, but you can feel it as though it is.
Correct.
And nothing prevents you from doing that. So I just wanted to add that there.
No, absolutely. You're absolutely right about that. I think that really is a key component. Chris, I want to come back to you, because there was something you brought up earlier, and I think it's very important too. And this is when we were talking about fears, and facing those fears. And I think it's very important that part of that is understanding, and I think you also mentioned your why, figuring out what your why is, or what the end game or goal or objective really is.
Knowing that I'm not a finished product, knowing that there's a lot of building that has to go on for me. But the reality is, and this is what I believe, is that I have some of the baseline tools already to be able to thrive in this environment, and really being able, and really having the ability to carry out the mission. And this is where the manifestation comes in, and really understanding that. Before I stop, I want to read something right quick for our viewing audience. I looked up while we were talking earlier. I looked up what does it mean if you manifest something, and the Webster definition of that is to manifest something means to make your dreams, goals, and aspirations a reality by believing that you can achieve them. The idea is that by believing you can do something and focusing your thoughts and energy in that direction, you can actually make it happen. I subscribe to that theory. No matter how painful it can be in the beginning, if it's a part of my dream set, let's call it that. If it's a part of my dream set, then in my mind, no matter how bad the day is or how much my fears kick in sometimes, I tend to fight through that, understanding that I can get there and understanding that I can actually thrive at whatever it is I've literally put my mind at accomplishing. Yep. And that's something that's that resiliency piece that's somewhere in my DNA that has been built into my DNA, because I always fall back on that. I'm a resilient individual. No matter how many times you knock me down, I'm going to equally get up. And that is really one of the overarching stories of my life is I've been knocked down more times than I care to admit, but I have always figured out how to get back up, either by myself or through the help of others.
I want to go back to what you were saying about comparing yourself to others, and that being a habit or a pattern that you had over years. And, you look at it, he's got these degrees and he does that, and et cetera, et cetera. Where I want our audience to really focus in on is not so much that comparison, but let's start to think about this fact. And this is a fact that we all have, but we have to open our minds and our hearts to it. We all have our own unique gifts. So your gifts that you bring to the table will always be different from his. Right. And it's not wrapped necessarily in education, or sometimes it is life experience. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just the things you've experienced in your journey. And all of us are on our own unique paths within life as far as that goes. But each of us has our own set of unique gifts. And that's where I think our energy, effort, and focus should be on, is understanding and identifying what those gifts are, and then finding places and spaces that are beneficial to us to be able to use and apply them. So I think that is why you are where you are now, is because you have a set of unique gifts that are Chris Black and nobody else's. And now you're in a place where you can actually use and apply those things. So wrapping your mind around that piece and being accepting of that is, I think, a key component that people need to also start to focus and get comfortable with.
You know what? If I may interject again. Yeah. It's funny you would say that, because that exactly is the thought process that I went through this past week. And I was like, and we actually had a discussion about this. I said, there are certain things I bring to the table beyond the X's and O's that are sometimes hard to express verbally, but I know that they exist. And I know, as part of my why I'm involved, why they brought it in, because they were able to see it. I think, the guy that I'm working with, for whatever, however you want to frame it, Mike, I think he sees that. And the more time I spend in this environment, the more I'm able to actually visualize it and see it, and come to understand that it's some of what I'm bringing to the table is beyond the X's and O's. Obviously, I do want to bring the X's and O's to the situation, but the reality is, there are other intangibles that I know, if I'm leaning into who I am as an individual and the value proposition of what I bring to the table, that's where I find a sweet spot saying there is more to this beyond this test. Obviously I need to get this testing on my belt, and I'm going to. That's I'm definitely back. I've come full circle on it, which says, oh, I'm getting the testing done. That's it's not a question of if, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. But the reality is I am so much more than the sum of my parts.
It's funny, Chris, because we've talked about some of this stuff personally, and when I hear you say these things like self-doubt, etc., one of the things that I appreciate about you is your authenticity, and your that's one. Two is I've always heard and seen you appreciate, enjoy sharing and mentoring others. So you just have that giving kind of component too. And then the third piece of it really is going back to when you say you compare yourself, the applied learning versus the academic learning in my book has been one of the greatest or most challenging struggles in how we view, oh, I'm smart, or I'm smarter, or I'm accomplished, or I've done this. And I think the one thing that I come back to discussing this whole idea of logical and then your subconscious, etc., is, at the end of the day, when we think about, our Friday, or we think about our end of life, or our deathbed, or whatever, all the degrees and all that stuff, that means nothing. I'm saying this from someone who has some more life experience. However, what I have heard across the board, and I truly believe, is life is short, and you can go anytime. And how many friends and folks that we know that unfortunately don't get to live how we define as a full life. So at the end of the day, does all that matter? If it matters to you, then great. If it doesn't matter, then, but it's what you will bring to this particular job that will add value to these individuals who are also trying to figure it out. And that authenticity and that resilience and that I've been there, I can also see it when I start to think about your experience in this test. It's like, oh, you know what? I've also had a mentor who's told me, yeah, he held the record in the most number of rejections for a job offer. And then he also, in the same breath, said he also held the record in the most number of acceptances. And so to me, I think about how you write your story and how we all write our own stories. And I'm like, oh, wow, man, maybe it's going to take Chris 3, 4, 5 times to finish this thing. But man, that story, going back to working with those students, will be like, hey, I was in your same boat. This is you talking as if I'm talking. And it's like, yeah, it's going to be tough, but don't beat yourself up. It's like, it took me X number of times, and you'll get there. It's just a matter of, will you give up after the first time? How bad do you want this? What is your purpose in life? What is your ikigai, as they all often talk about this? Where does it all align to? And it sounds to me like this is going into a way where, yeah, it makes sense. Like when, again, this is something. And as we all age, especially me, I find myself valuing more of that, that pay it forward, that legacy, all those conversations.
And Vince, while you have the mic, I want to bring this to you because this is an area I know we talk a lot about, and I think this is important for what we're covering today, and that's vulnerability. And how about you share a little bit about just, because I know you've done some research. There are some specific individuals I know you follow their principles about vulnerability and the value of that. And I think that's one piece of this that people really need to understand so they can start to get comfortable with. This is going to take some vulnerability to get through it.
We often talk about culture, and we talk about the power of vulnerability. And vulnerability is in my belief, is a newer term that is allowing us to do a number of things. One is it defines a culture or the intent of this group or this organization or this culture. to be able to hold space, to be able to be vulnerable and share to the world. But then the flip side of that is shame and guilt, and the piece behind that, which is our internal not feeling good enough. It's that internal, chip on our shoulder where it's like, oh, you can't share that. Oh, don't feel like that. And today I'm grateful for where I am now and our culture. But if an individual does not feel like they are in a safe space, finding and comparing and contrasting what is a toxic space versus what is a safe space, and acknowledging that, I think, is really important. So one of my ahas in the early part of this growth was looking at this famous shame researcher, and she's got this amazing TED Talk, and her name is Brene Brown. She's got like 22 million views on this TED Talk, and it's looking at someone who is vulnerable and shares that vulnerability, and converts her fears into her story and her superpower and her gift. And that's what I exemplify or try to is, that's okay if someone interprets your vulnerability as whatever that is. That's okay. But you sharing that vulnerability allows them to also reflect back and have a connection, because as we talked about it's a trust in yourself. Like, I'm okay with sharing this. It's a trust in others. It's like, I'm going to share this with you in the hope that you can also build a connection with me. Because if you don't trust humanity and you don't trust others, then that's unfortunate. But it also doesn't mean that you're not less than or not worthy enough. It just also means that you got to continue doing. You got to continue to put yourself out there. And putting yourself out there is what will change your mindset, because it will move you from a negative mindset into a growth mindset of like, yeah, no one's perfect. We all struggle. At the end of the day, some have more of this and some have less of this. But as long as we can appreciate each other and appreciate ourselves.
So I want to move to the final thing I want to cover today. We've covered a lot of territory. We've shared, I think, a lot of great insight and ideas, things our audience can definitely, I believe, extract some actionable things from and start to move themselves from an evolutionary standpoint forward. But I think the last piece that I want to touch on as far as that whole journey goes is what can we share as our kind of final thoughts to make sure those things stick and stay and that it's lasting change, so that, as things get challenging, and as we know, life is always going to throw obstacles in your way, that you are able to continue to navigate and fight your way through those different situations. So, Chris, I'll come to you first. What has been some of the things you've been able to do just to make sure that as you do evolve and change, that it sticks and you have that I guess a little bit of fortitude to continue to push yourself forward?
I think one of the things it starts with is habits. We've discussed habits in the past. What kind of habits you are, what kind of habits you have, what kind of habits you develop. The old adage, you are what you eat, the company you keep. I am big on, and it's funny because I know there are people out there who hear me say I have conversations with myself. And people are like, what do you mean you have conversations with yourself? You loft it, you know what I mean? And it is for me one of the tools that I lean into a lot, which is having conversation with reinforcing conversation with myself. Let me preface that. Reinforcing conversation with myself, surrounding my goals, my challenges, the ups, the downs, the whole 9 yards. As you know, I'm a water guy. I'm a self-professed water guy. I have to get to the water a couple times a week because it's a safe place. It's a quiet place. I don't carry my phone in the water. So it really gives me a chance to really kind of get one with self and the elements. And, my analogy, and you know this, Brian, and you know this, Vinny, is that I look at the ocean as life. So sometimes I just did a post last weekend, and it was really to kind of unburden me about this whole testing and and the anxiety that I was experiencing through all of this process right now in real time. And the water, like I said, the water sometimes is very, very calm, and sometimes it's just not calm. It's not nice. It's not forgiving, and it can be pretty brutal on you. And I don't know. I'm at a point in my life where I don't say I go looking for challenges, but when they meet me at my door, I meet them at their door. I don't tend to run from them. I really tend to stand tall in it. And I use that water in my swimming as that example for me, that when I look at that water and it's like, man, last week the swells were up crazy. I mean, it was, if you go back and read my post, I said, it's like getting smacked with a 5-foot wave, unexpectedly getting smacked in the face. How do you react? It's like Mike Tyson telling you, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. How do you react after you get punched in the mouth? Do you fold, or do you take a step back, take a deep breath, and figure out how to proceed forward? So for me, like I said, I try to use all the tools in the toolbox as far as getting, trying to manifest my goals and my dreams and the things that I really want out of life, the things that matter to me the most.
If I'm seeking on the outside, that's where the difficulty happens to be in my life, because like everything changes. Nothing is ever the same. I mean, not even the rising of the sun is the same. It rises on a different angle, and even though we can't perceive it, science has already proven that we're moving further and further away from the sun. So as we spiral, we're in a spiral as opposed to a circle around the sun. So when you start to recognize that this whole world is always changing, I'm never out here trying to hold on to anything. And I'm not saying I'm great at this, it's that but it's how often can I remember that? How often can I remember who I truly am? That I'm not this person called Jerry. I'm the one who's experiencing Jerry, who's in conversation with Brian and Chris and Vincent. I have my boys. I have a baby on the way. These are all things that 10 years ago, if you would have told me that I'd be on this type of podcast having this type of conversation, I literally would have told you you're crazy. And because I would be like, I don't know anything about this stuff. But I changed. Jerry changed. But I have been here the whole time. And I don't change. So that's what keeps me going every day, and waking up every day, and recognizing that I get to make an impact in this world. I get to throw pebbles into the water and see the ripples going forward.
Absolutely right. And that's funny. I love how you put that, just about, I have been here the whole time, but I have also changed and evolved. So it's some duality there. That's very interesting. Vince, what about you? What are your thoughts, and what would you like to share, just talking about making sure that the change sticks as you try to move forward?
A lot of that for me has been the self-reflection piece, so reflecting back, and Jerry kind of mentioned this in his looking back 10 years, or asking yourself, it's really valuable for me to think about those experiences and those individuals, because as we talked about earlier, it defines us. Question is, does it limit us? And as we are defining our growth and our change, to appreciate those experiences and those individuals is really valuable, because we're so close to it. It's through our own lens. It's our own movie, and as we play out our own movie, you gotta celebrate those wins, however small they are, whatever they are. It's taking time. It's being present. It's pausing. It's saying, you know what, I need a mental health day. I need a change up. A lot of it for me has been to continue this cycle is been to just change my energy, whatever that is. I mean, it could be as simple as I'm going to change the furniture in my area just to feng shui it, or to I'm going to go out and be vulnerable and meet new people and put myself out there. And because it's something that I need. I'm feeling like I need more in this, and I'm setting my intention and I'm manifesting this, and I'm open it. And that's part of the biggest issue is if you're closed to it, it's you're shutting yourself off. But if you're open to it, it's like, okay, I'll go with the flow. And when you take trips, when you go out in there and you go into different environments, whatever that is, whether it's down the road or on an airplane, I've appreciated so much more allowing kind of that external, that universe piece of it, to just let it flow, let it go. Oh, maybe this is where I'm supposed to be. Okay. Looking at all the challenging situations, and we think challenging because it's not going to plan. It's not going to our plan. And then recognizing that, well, you know what? Maybe the universe, maybe whatever that is, has a different plan. And you just gotta let it unfold and follow it and see, and then reflect back and be like, oh wow, that was really interesting. All those negative experiences were a part of your plan, and they're not negative because it's only negative in your mind. Sure, things happen. Death is a reality. Suffering is a component for both internal, external. But as we talked about in this whole evolve or repeat, it's our mindset. It's how we look at it. It's how we show up. It's how we change this narrative to be, well, I can either wallow in this, or I can be like, okay, there's a lot of other individuals out there that we would define as being in a far worse situation. So, put yourself out there, travel, get out there, look at things, talk to others, make friendships.
So the only thing I want to add is just a simple principle, and that is, and Jerry kind of alluded to it earlier in today's talk, and that is just choose to do something. It's choice. You always have the choice, right? So no matter how trapped you may feel or what the situation may be, you have the power to choose to do something different than what you have been doing. And if there's anything to take away from all of what we talked about today, is that piece of it is you can always choose to do something different.
The thing I thought of when everybody was talking, giving their last little bits and pieces was, especially you, Jerry, faith. I'm a big faith person. And the older I get, the more I've leaned into faith. Faith that A, it's going to be okay. B, the dreams that I have are, I think, wonderful dreams. And I don't feel like there's any reason I shouldn't be able to achieve these dreams that I have. But more importantly, how strong is your faith? And how does your faith get affected when the challenges of life meet you at the curb? I go through this a lot in my day-to-day travels in real time. And I have to lean into especially right now, because there's a lot of, the other part of the challenge of this past week and this whole idea of testing is I'm discovering so much more unknown, because I'm involved in a brand new pilot program that all the rules and everything. And because this is the first time, there's so much new stuff that's coming up that I'm having to digest and deal with. And naturally, as a human being, new things really trip us up in a lot of situations. And we tend to, as just human nature will allow, we tend to look at things not so much of what's good, but what's bad or what can go wrong. And that is the real challenge in all of this, is to keep your mind focused and moving in the right direction. And I'll be the first one to say that, that's a part of being vulnerable. That vulnerability, I heard that earlier where somebody mentioned vulnerable. I don't know who said it, but that vulnerability piece, allowing yourself to be vulnerable. And that's been my biggest challenge, I think, this week, is to allow myself to be vulnerable, because I can't control this. I don't have control of it. I literally don't. And I've actually restated a couple of my goals in this process through this week of where I ultimately think I'd like to end up being. I'll keep them to myself today because I'm still formulating them, but it's really, I'm embracing this, which is what I'm doing. And I would advise any of our listeners, if they're, because you're going to find somebody's going to find something out of everything that everyone has said that applies to them, but just be okay with being vulnerable. And I think that that's a big thing in society today, is people don't want to be vulnerable. They want safe.
Chris, thanks for sharing that. Gentlemen, this has been an excellent session. I think we've